you wrote this book to be consumed. You wrote this book because it's really going to help people. And the hardest work is the editing phase of getting it done. But the next hardest work is not writing the book, it's promoting the book. And so get ready for a journey and identify what works and what doesn't work and do more of what works and less of what doesn't. But, I'm going to be promoting my books till the day that I'm 120, because this book promotion, book tour never ends.
Welcome to the Daily Author Podcast, where we talk all things nonfiction books with authors and discuss how they're using their book as a leverage point into more income and impact. My guest today is Craig Ballantynes. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, this is going to be a lot of fun, Owen.
Definitely. Well, Craig, you're a business coach. You got a couple books out, or 3 or 4 books out as a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and you got a new one coming out called The Dark Side of Discipline that I'm really excited to get into here. But you've been coined the world's most disciplined man. What a title to have. So it makes sense for you to obviously write this book and reveal the dark side. So you have other books on productivity and winning the day, having a perfect day. But what led you to wanting to write this book on discipline and also take the angle of the dark side of it?
Yeah. Yeah. So discipline leads people down a lot of paths. And for some people, it's a lifeline, alcoholics, bad vices, it can get you into a good spot. But when you're a high performer and you're looking for the discipline to go to the next level, you really have to step back and think about your big why and your specific definition of success, and stop chasing these online challenges and these hacks and habits that you see people posting on Instagram or social media. And the next thing you know, some people go down that rabbit hole. And what actually happened to one of my friends, a really good friend of mine, a guy who I looked up to because he was happily married, he had a great family, he was wealthy, he was ripped, he had, a great sports car, is he went and he thought, oh, I got to join these discipline challenges and I got to do them. And he went and did them a couple times. And after he had finished the second round of it, getting claps on the back from internet strangers that he would never meet, his wife walked out on him with the kids. He spent half his time doing all the tasks in the discipline challenge, and he spent half his time glued to his phone for work. And it broke my heart because, again, this was a guy that I thought was living the dream, and he was actually living his nightmare. And so he was chasing another person's definition of discipline, and that's the least disciplined thing that you can do. And that's what inspired me to write this book, because I see people going down these rabbit holes and wasting so much time and energy on stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I've been on a bit of a mission myself as a younger entrepreneur of how do you have a great family life and build a great business. And you're an embodiment of this right now. I know you're having a couple kids recently and you got a great wife and you're running your business. But it doesn't really seem to be, I mean, it's definitely not common. You see a lot of these billionaires and large individuals that are creating movements in our world. They don't have any balance on the family life or relationships. And obviously this example of your friend. So what's kind of like your answer to that, of like someone even like myself, a younger entrepreneur who wants to have good impact in the world, a good financial bank account, but also have a loving family at home that, is not going to just walk out one day?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite simple. And it's actually through the elimination of a lot of things. So we have discipline through subtraction and learning to say no to a lot of things. And again, you step back and you figure out, what do you really want in life? And then when you know exactly what you want in life, where you want to live, what you want your family to look like, how many hours you want to work in a week, and you've built these boxes and constraints, then you can build parameters around how you make your decisions, and your decisions will be made easier. So there'll be less decision fatigue. Some of the great people that do an excellent job of this are guys like Cal Newport. He's very famous for, he's got excellent number of books published. He has great family life. He gets a lot done, and he's very famous for not doing a lot of things. And there are a lot of great entrepreneurs out there, like Russell Brunson, who has maybe 5, 6 kids, who's got a huge movement. And yes, he does work a lot, but he was influenced by my first book, The Perfect Day Formula, to focus on what really mattered first thing in the morning. And that was one of the things that allowed him to scale. Now, he probably does too many things because that's what we do as entrepreneurs. We're like those people who go to the buffet in Vegas, and even though the plate is only so big, we overload it. And we want to do a lot of things. But if you hack away at the unessential, that's where you get down to what really moves the needle in your business. And a great mindset on this is the 80-20 principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. And it's almost you could almost say it's a lazy man's guide compared to people that do 100 million things. No, you only need to do a couple of things really, really well, and you need to time things really well, and you can have explosive results. And that's what you should get after is the 80-20, 80-20 everything in your life. That 80% of your happiness comes from 20% of your interactions. 80% of your fitness results come from 20% of the exercises and 20% of the sets. You don't need to be doing the volume of what most people do in most areas of life.
Yeah, those are great points. I'm coming to realize this more as I age that really less is more. And it
Mhm.
seems like the entrepreneur thinks more hustle, more hours,
Yeah.
more projects, and it's super counterintuitive. It's actually the opposite approach from what you're outlining here too, to find to embody the 80-20 principle and also to say no to a lot of things. And I think that's actually what I've captured from people like Warren Buffett and other individuals that they do a really good job at saying no. Now, I guess I could ask this when we kick things off, but like, do you have a definition of discipline for yourself that potentially is the opposite of maybe what the stigma is in our world around discipline?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the ultimate definition of discipline is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem or opportunity. It's not just problems. So if you think about the fact, most people listening to this, a book is seen as, by most people listening to this, as a huge opportunity. And, it's maybe a level 9 or 10 opportunity in your life. Maybe you also run a business and that's your biggest opportunity for money, but a book is also pretty high up there. Well, what level of effort are you putting into it? Well, you're scrolling on social media, you're doing some challenges that are taking away writing time, you're not consistent with it. You're putting a level 4 effort into it, and that's not disciplined. It's the only definition of discipline is a level 10 effort into your level 10 problems. And so my friend who I talked about, who inspired me to write the book, he was putting a level 10 effort into a level 3 problem, maybe even a level 1 problem. He already had six-pack abs. He already had biceps. He was already disciplined in many ways. And yet he was chasing another person's definition of discipline. And he was putting a lot of effort into it. But what about his marriage? His marriage was the level 10 problem. And I knew that he always had a hard time cutting off his workday. I've coached him on it. And, he would come up from his downstairs office half an hour later than he said he would. He would bring up his phone and he'd work on it and it would upset his wife. And so he was putting a level 1 effort into the level 10 problem. It's a total mismatch. And so I always think about what is my level 10 problem for the day, for the next quarter, for the year, for my future. And I aim to put a level 10 effort into that so that I'm doing the right things, not more things, but the right things.
So what I'm hearing from that is to have like mindful planning for the week, for the day, for the week, for the quarter. But then also I
Absolutely.
think the big component that I want to dive into next is like the daily reflection. Are you acting on that plan? So do you have like a practice? I mean, you kind of been alluding to it, but do you have like a practice of whether it's just a mental question at the end of the night, am I operating at a level 10 effort or,
It's
checking your day?
it's a
Like,
little bit different, but we have this technique that we talk about in the book called watching the movie of your life, watching the movie of your day. So everybody generally either wakes up or when they wake up, they make their to-do list for the day. It should be done the day before, not in the morning. It should be done the day before. And so you wake up and that to-do list, that schedule is the movie script for your life. And so at the end of the day, maybe 7 o'clock after dinner, or maybe, 5 o'clock before you go home, or maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, but not too close to bed. You don't want to get too wired and fired up about it. You look and you compare how did the movie of your day run against the movie script for your life. So you want to get up at 6 o'clock and not hit snooze, and you wanted to get up and do a bit of work on your book, and then you wanted to go and do meditation or exercise, and then you wanted to have breakfast with your family or by yourself or whatever, and then you wanted to get into a good deep work block. All right, well, what really happened? Well, you woke up and you hit snooze twice because you were up too late the night before watching Netflix. And so you skipped your writing and you were late for breakfast and you over caffeinated and you were, maybe if you drove to work, you were late and that meant you got in traffic and you got stuck. And by the time you got to work, you had a call with somebody and you were grumpy and snappy. And your whole day is a negative domino after negative domino after negative domino because of what you did first thing in the morning. And so it's through that self reflection and introspection that you go back and you reverse engineer What was the root cause of the negative that ruined the day or that put a damper in your day? And then you go and you identify solutions so that does not happen again. And we talk about, I have another book called The Perfect Week Formula, and we talk about how the nighttime routine, getting to bed on time, shutting down your electronics an hour before bed, it's the most boring thing in the world. It does not compare on social media to ice bath plunges and stuff. Like, I don't know how you make a sexy video of this, but I've coached people for 25 years. And the most important thing is you getting to bed on time the night before. Because if you don't, then you hit snooze and your day's ruined. If you get to bed on time and you get up on time, you have a chance to win the day every single day. And so it's that reflection at the end of the day of watching the movie of your life and comparing that with the movie script for your life that you're able to then refine your systems and become super productive and effective.
No, I love that connection of the movie script being the to-do list and then
Yeah.
kind of replaying the actual movie back. Um, I'll speak for myself. I rise early, but I'm not a 5 a.m. guy, a 6 a.m. guy as much as I would like to. And what has helped me is exactly what you said, to actually have a wind down time or a go to bed time versus a rise time. So for my other night crawlers that are listening here, like I know I'm sure you've gotten this question a bunch, but what's kind of advice to that person who seems to be most productive at later hours of the day, um, or just can't seem to kind of get that 6 a.m. wake up time on a consistent basis? What's your advice to
It's a
them?
great question. And let me tell you that it's not about the hour that you get up, it's about what you do with the hours that you are up. One of my best friends built a $100 million supplement company between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. He had young kids and he is not an early morning person. And so he was a night owl. Now he's switched a little bit because the demands of family life, once his kids started going to school and he had to take them to school, demanded that. But all this hang up on the 5 a.m. club, the 5 a.m. club is a garbage idea for the majority of people where you're not meant to get up so early in the morning. I get up really early in the morning because I just don't like being around a lot of people. And I have my alone time early in the morning. And I'm naturally an early riser and I want to do everything in the morning. But if I was a night owl, I would use the same effective principles to get work done at night. And it all comes down to elimination of distractions and planning and preparation. So if you are that type of person who in your stage of life, you're just not, it's no way I'm getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just because somebody gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning and everybody joins the 5 a.m. club doesn't mean it's right for you. In fact, it is a bad idea for most people. And so you look and you go, what's the right decision for me? And that's what all of this is really about. What are the right decisions for me for my right life? And if I'm meant to sleep from 2 a.m. until 10 a.m. and then get up and then do a little bit of work on my book, prepping and preparing for the day, and then go and do my exercise, and then spend some time with my family. And then when I put them to bed at 8 o'clock from 9 until 1 a.m., I'm going to write 1,000, 2,000 words on my book. And God bless you to do that. Do that. And don't be hung up on somebody else's idea of what their great day is. Now, I will say that with everything, all the temptations out there, it is actually much harder to be a night owl than it is to be an early riser because you have Netflix, you have alcohol, you have other people that want to spend time with you. It's difficult. And I think that it's actually easier to be an early riser. So the most important thing there is not about the hour you get up, it's about what you do with the hours that you are up using systems.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean that's a great one-liner right there. I love that. And I think in the midst of cookie cutter advice on social and self-help books of like one fits all, I love your angle of just make the right decision for yourself and
Mm.
take the information in, have a filter, but then put it into your life in the best possible way that suits you versus trying to follow the latest hack or self-help advice that obviously I'm exposed to a lot and I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah,
But
sure.
well, I want to ask something kind of tactically about the book itself. I've noticed that your previous books are under 150 pages, 130 pages. I see a lot of books that are fluffy, they're long, they look pretty because they're thick. Is there a strategy behind that of you kind of having books that are more on a shorter end, perhaps from a page length?
It's a combination of things. Now, so I had never actually read Atomic Habits until last year. And Atomic Habits, has sold what, 15 million copies.
Yeah.
And I find it an unnecessarily long book. The content is great, but it is a really long, like not a really long book. It's not like Dianetics or something, but it's a long book. And I thought it was too long. And obviously, as a productivity efficiency expert, I'm not going to write long, fluffy books. And my goal with this one was to make it actually much shorter. So the Dark Side of Discipline is about 26,000 words. My goal was 25,000. And I used a regular book design in the end, but I was really thinking of I want it really small so that I can make smaller sized copies of the book. And there's good stories in it, but without being necessarily long stories. And I think that at 100 pages, 26,000 words compared to 140 pages and 40,000 words in my other books, that this one is the tightest one that I've written. And, there are a lot of editing, a lot of rounds going back and forth on it, especially having a co-author for the first time. We challenged ourselves to get rid of fluff. As Stephen King says in his book on writing, which is if everybody's listening to this and you want to be an author and you have not read On Writing by Stephen King, you must. And in that book, he says, kill your darlings. And it is so hard to kill your darlings. And what he means by that is you've written something that you think is really great. And I killed a lot of darlings in this discipline book. And I went to my co-author and I said, am I just being, a bit of a smart aleck here, or is this good content? He goes, it's funny, but it's going to rub people the wrong way and it's not necessary for the book. There was a couple things I had about some of these specific online challenges. And so we killed them. And it was hard at first, but once the book comes out, I'll never remember hardly writing it. And I've got a lot of content for other things. But I think that's very important. The other thing that I will say is and Amazon has stats on this. And if somebody's an author, they tend to be a reader. And you know as well as I do that you've got tons of books sitting in your house that you've never opened. I could probably live in a house made out of the books that I bought on Amazon and have not opened, 100, 200, because I've bought so many books and I haven't gotten around to reading them, but I'll buy another book even, because I've heard somebody recommend it. And so somebody's going to do that with your book. And so what I learned is, first of all, the most important thing about your book is the title and the cover, especially if you have it on Amazon, because when I was being coached by a guy named Carrie Oberbrunner, who's worked with a lot of great authors in the nonfiction space, like Justin Donald, John C. Maxwell, Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy, and he talked about how important it was to have your thumbnail on Amazon because so many people buy books like that. I don't, but a lot of people do. And so we put a lot of effort into that. So title, then thumbnail. And then another guy named Vern Harnish, who wrote Scaling Up, he told me, just get your most important stuff in the first chapter because Amazon stats show that most people, first of all, they don't even open the book. But those that do, about 90% don't even make it past the first chapter. So your call to action of, going to your website or whatever it is should be in the first chapter. And you should deliver a lot of value in the first chapter so that people can refer other people to and say, yeah, man, I only read the first chapter. It's really good. You got to go get this. And so those were some of the strategies and things that I was thinking about putting this book together because I want it to be consumed. I really do want it to be consumed. And I want it to be passed around and I want it to be shared and I want it to get a lot of legs. And, I did 600 podcast interviews for my first Perfect Day Formula book, and I'm going to do at least 1,000 for this one because I wrote my book to be read. And all those things go into it when I'm putting it together.
Yeah, no, all good points there. I mean, it's sure 15 million copies have been sold of Atomic Habits, but I would be curious to see what the stats are of how far they got through the book, how many
I
people have
probably own
finished
4
it.
of those copies. I just didn't read it, and I'll just I moved a bunch of times and it's like, I can't take this with me. So just leave it behind.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you mean by thumbnail though? That's an interesting point.
So the book cover, right? So if you're
Yep.
you're on Amazon and you just bought a book, and then underneath that it shows like, people who bought this book also bought these books.
Yes.
And usually they're like small thumbnails, right? Like it's not a giant picture.
Oh, right.
And you have to have your book cover stand out down there so that because I think it shows probably like you might see a dozen little thumbnails.
Yeah.
So you bought Who Not How by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. All right. Other people bought these books, Deep Work by Cal Newport and whatever else, and this and this and this. And if somebody sees that and they see, that cover looks interesting, I'm going to click on it. Don't judge a book by its cover. That's what humans do. And so that's why putting effort into the cover was so valuable for us. And so I'll break it down for how we did it. We started off I started off with my own ideas and I sent them to a guy who does a lot of artwork for a company. And he sent me back some pretty rough sketches. And I showed them to this guy, Kerry Oberbrunner, and he had some feedback on it. And then we ran a contest on 99 designs. And I sent Kerry the ones that I thought were good. And he goes, no, no, they're not good. And he went and used AI and put a bunch of ideas into AI that shot back the idea of using an eclipse of the sun, which is our cover. And so we then updated the contest on 99 designs to, because you give a bit of guidance, and we updated the contest design, and one guy nailed it. And it was a really standout cover, but it was totally different from the idea I had in my mind originally. I thought it was going to be I wanted it to be a bright yellow cover, and it ended up being a black cover with an eclipse of the sun. Although it's funny, somebody looked and goes, "Man, that's really cool! Like using black holes as imagery." And I'm like, "It's an eclipse, bro. It doesn't matter. It does stand out." And
Yeah.
he's pretty pumped about it.
Well,
Carrie is, and we're pretty pumped about it too.
no, for sure. I definitely like it. And I think it aligns beautifully with the title, The Dark Side. I mean,
Yeah,
that's like the other thing you probably could have done is like a Pink Floyd type of cover
I was
just to
thinking
lean into
that, but
that.
the Pink Floyd album is not necessarily conducive to. I
Yeah.
don't think so. It's definitely on people's minds, but it's so that's just for everybody listening. It's a really great story about how you have to be open to the ideas of others and the advice of others, and then use all the tools that are available for you right now, from the classic 99 designs to the AI stuff that people can crank out so fast.
Yeah, the collaborative effort is what I hear there too. But I think the other point is also, and that's why I wanted some clarification there. It's one thing to have the book cover on Amazon, which still is not the biggest piece of real estate on the site, but then to have even smaller spot in that suggested view, you want it to stand out. It's like a YouTube thumbnail that I'm learning
Sure.
now that I'm tapping into YouTube more. You need it to be clear and to be seen
Right.
from a far distance and have the person know what they're looking at.
Yeah, book covers are the same as YouTube, right? So YouTube, it's the title and the thumbnail is responsible for like 80% of your views.
Yeah.
And your book title is very important, and then your book cover as well. And Carrie was like showing me stuff like Atomic Habits. So, if you look at Atomic Habits from far away, it's a pretty boring cover. If you get up close, it's all these little dots which represent the atoms. And Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, some of the letters are clock figures. And if you go, like, I don't think that's going to convince too many people to buy the book, but it does show like there's another level to it. And maybe it's a little more compelling. And, you want to do everything to get people to buy your book. And so, don't dismiss how important the cover is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you alluded to it before that you did 600 podcasts for the first book, and now you're planning to do 1,000, which I
Yeah.
keep hearing podcasts is an amazing way to move books or at least get the good word out about books. What are ways you're going to use to promote this book that you potentially did in the past, or maybe you didn't, and now you've learned after having a couple books out in the world?
Oh, the most important thing is your email list. If you don't have an email list, I mean, your book is pretty much dead in the water. And even in this day and age. And so if you control the list, and we have large email lists in our business, like I did everything wrong on Amazon with the perfect day formula, but I still have 1,100 reviews, and we've sold probably 100,000 copies of that book self-published. And it was mostly because we had an email list to kick the campaign off and sell. We don't just sell copies of the book. We have an entire little kit that goes with it, with additional work tools and stuff. But it really comes down to the email list, because if you don't have the email list, well, what do you have? You have the option of going on podcasts and doing the roadshow, but the manual labor in that, the leverage in an email list is huge. The manual labor in the podcast is a lot. And the point of the podcast is to get people to the website or to an opt-in where you can then email them about the book and that sort of stuff. The next thing is you have your free plus shipping. And yeah, you can do that, but you got to have good Facebook ad strategies and Facebook ad tactics, and you have to make the numbers work. Aside from that, well, you can have your social media, but nothing's as efficient as email with link in it. So if I go on a podcast and I say, go to darksideofdiscipline.com, well, now what do you have to do? You have to type the URL in. And if you are on social media and you're talking about it, same thing. Instagram is not like very conducive from video or written content to click through
Right.
to a page. There is at least one extra step, whether it's link in bio or you have to go and watch somebody's stories and then you can click directly on the link. And if you have a lot of story views, you might be able to send a bunch of traffic, but people reading an email are much more receptive to buying than people flipping through their stories late at night. So email list is above and beyond the greatest thing in the world. And the next thing is other people's email lists. So if other people that you know want to recommend your book, get them to send an email. That's going to be the best thing. If somebody wants to support your book, getting them to send an email is best. And then you can get into some bulk buys and some corporate speaking and stuff like that. And there's a million and one ways to sell your book, but the biggest needle mover is by far for me was email list.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been pushing that to so many authors as well. I mean, business owners, and you've had obviously decades of experience of building email lists and products and lead magnets. So that kind of takes me to my next question. What are good ways that an author could grow their email list? I know there's a lot of talk around, hey, here's a free chapter. I personally don't think that's the best thing. I think there should
No.
be like a complementary tool that aligns with the book's concept to lead them into the book versus the actual one slice of the book. So I'd love to get your take on best kind of lead magnet ideas or email growth ideas for authors.
So email magnet is the same principle as the YouTube title and the title of the book. It's the most important thing. The promise of the opt-in. Because again, 90% of the people who get what they opted in for will not use it or consume it. And just think about how many PDFs and things everybody listening are on your desktop or have been on your desktop that you're like, yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. You never get to it.
Right.
And so it needs to be a super compelling lead magnet to build the email list. And whether or not you use a lead magnet is probably not even a good idea in the first place. But let me explain. So the lead magnet needs to be super compelling. So super short, like a checklist, a quiz. It's like we have something in the book that says, find out how disciplined you are. And it's like a series of short questions, but it's inside the book. We're not using a lead magnet because we're doing everything about direct sale of the book. Because when you get a lead magnet, well, here's the thing. So now somebody joins your email list and they got a free lead magnet, which they're not going to open or use. And then now in, I don't know, 50, 70% of the cases, that autoresponder of here's your free lead magnet goes to their spam. So, next time you see a free lead magnet, opt in and see where the reply goes. Chances are it goes to your spam. So then your email deliverability is going to be quite low on a free lead magnet because people don't value it. They don't go looking for it. And then let's say you get 1,000 people to opt in. Okay. And 500 of that goes to spam. So 500 actually getting the email delivered. And then you're not really that good at email writing. So only 100 people of the 500 people open the email. And then your copy inside the email doesn't send very many people to click through to buy the book. And how much money did you spend on all those leads? So yes, it's good, but you don't just like, oh, I'm going to put up a free lead magnet. I'm going to have all these people buy my book. Not how it works. I'm sorry. So what we do in most cases is we actually we don't have any free lead magnets. So we send paid traffic to, we are all about direct sale. So we directly sell courses and books that people value. And so when they buy, they go, where the heck is my email for this? I better go check my junk mail and then move it from junk mail to my regular inbox so I get more updates on this. And now I can sell those people books better than if I gave them a free lead magnet that they never valued. So, I mean, it's a tough game.
Yep.
But if you're serious about selling books, then get ready and play the tough game.
Yeah, definitely. Well, all good points there. I love that. And even just like a little insight you shared that you put it inside the book, which I think is a big component. Like even you see that on the look inside feature on Amazon. You don't even have to buy the book potentially, but you can see your free lead magnet or
Mhm.
your paid lead magnet, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And you could get an email sub, which we can argue is more valuable potentially than
Well,
a
email subs are great.
book fiber.
It's just that there's a lot more hurdles today than there was 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years, et cetera. And we probably have about four places in the book where we've created more tools for this. We have this quiz. Go to this, go to darksideofdiscipline.com/success. That'll work. Anybody can listen to it can get access to it without buying the book. And we also have the QR code in the book now too. So QR codes,
Yeah.
pre-COVID, nobody would have used it. Now people understand how to use them and they're getting pretty popular. And one thing that I didn't do for this show that I am doing for my future shows, and it was inspired by my friend Joe Polish when he released his book, What's in It for Them, his Zoom background, which I have created. We're making a few tweaks on it. And this is only the second podcast I've done to promote the book. So I've got a bright yellow Zoom background with the book cover on this side and then a QR code on this side. So if you're going to do the podcast round, get something like that so that people can be watching the podcast on YouTube and scan the QR code that takes them to the site to buy the book. And then if you do presentations in public, make sure that, if you're speaking in front of 100 people at an event or 1,000 people or 5,000 people at Funnel Hacking Live, and you're doing a presentation and you're like, hey, you want my slides, you want my book, just scan this QR code. And then you get that's another way of getting it.
Yeah, absolutely. QR codes are such a hack to create a fast connection between getting people to a landing page. But Craig, this has been a great conversation. I'd love to ask this last question as we wrap up, but just
Yeah.
1 to 2 sentences of advice to that new nonfiction author who's preparing for launch with all your experience and wisdom. What would you share with that person?
Launch never ends. So if you wrote this book to be consumed, you wrote this book because it's really going to help people. And the hardest work is the editing phase of getting it done. But the next hardest work is not writing the book, it's promoting the book. And so get ready for a journey and identify what works and what doesn't work and do more of what works and less of what doesn't. But, I'm going to be promoting my books till the day that I'm 120 because this book promotion, book tour never ends.
Yeah, love it, Craig. Well, that's good to hear because a lot of people see the book publishing part as the end of the journey when really it's actually more or less the start.
Yeah.
And you got to promote the heck out of the book. But Craig, we're excited to share this episode. Thanks again for coming on the show. And we're excited to share your book once it comes out.
Thank you.